You left 6 years blank. The hiring coordinator tapped Caleb Ward's application. People do not misplace 6 years of their lives. Caleb checked the clock above the service desk. He had 43 minutes before Maya's elementary school began charging late pickup fees, and the night janitor position was the first job he had found that offered health insurance and hours built around her school day. I did not misplace them, he said. I listed the work that applies here. A hardware store, warehouse maintenance, and freelance repairs. Cleaning, safety inspections, equipment repair. This is Halcyon Robotics. Our custodians work near restricted medical prototypes. We require a complete employment history. Caleb's phone vibrated. The school's number appeared, then disappeared when he silenced it. Run the background check, he said. Reject me if the facts make me unsafe. That is not how interviews work. It is how facts work. The coordinator drew a yellow line across his application. Caleb watched the marker move, but offered nothing else. He had learned to compress difficult truths until they fit inside answers nobody could question. It kept strangers out. It also left people he loved waiting for explanations he never gave. Across the lobby, a floor cleaning machine released a sharp mechanical whine. A young custodian pulled the emergency handle twice, forcing the motor harder. Caleb turned toward him. Cut the power before the drive belt snaps. Mr. Ward, remain in the applicant area. The custodian reached for the handle again. Caleb crossed the tile, unplugged the machine, and knelt beside it. A purple bead bracelet Maya had made circled his wrist. He removed a twisted strip of packing plastic from the brush housing, reset the safety latch, and rolled the machine back. Try it now. The motor started cleanly. You touched company equipment without authorization, the coordinator said. It was about to fail. Security will record that you ignored instructions. Caleb checked the clock again. 31 minutes. His phone vibrated a second time, and this time he answered. Hey, Bug. Mrs. Carson says you have to press 5 to call the office. Maya sounded more annoyed than worried. 8 years old, already used to waiting while her father solved problems nobody had asked him to solve. I know. Are you okay? I am the last kid in art club. I am leaving soon. You said that yesterday. Caleb looked at the flagged application. You are right. Put Mrs. Carson on. I will authorize the late program. The extra fee would take most of what remained in his checking account, but he did not tell Maya that. At the private elevator beyond the security gates, Evelyn Hart stepped into the lobby carrying a tablet filled with 3 unanswered board messages. Halcyon's directors expected her signature on a factory reopening before 5. Engineers had reported recurring contamination alarms. Legal counsel called them defective sensors. Evelyn had come downstairs because every alarm traced back to the same service corridor, and nobody on her executive team could explain why. Ms. Hart, the coordinator said, gathering the flagged applications. We are clearing the lobby. Give me every name submitted for restricted floor access today. These are janitorial applicants. Janitorial access is restricted floor access. Evelyn scanned the first page while walking. She dismissed the second. Then she reached Caleb's application. Her heel stopped against the tile. Caleb Ward. Her thumb moved from the missing 6-year section to the old hardware store address beneath it. The same address had appeared on a sealed envelope her father kept inside Halcyon's original safety archive. Evelyn had opened it after his funeral. Inside were a damaged access badge, a handwritten warning about the prototype wing, and one instruction she had never been able to explain. Find Caleb Ward before the company finds someone to blame. Caleb was already collecting his papers when Evelyn raised her head. Do not reject him. He looked toward her. Evelyn held his application against the tablet displaying the contamination deadline. Mr. Ward, come upstairs with me. Upstairs can wait 10 minutes, Caleb said. My daughter cannot. Evelyn studied him. Then the school number glowing on his phone. You are walking away from the only person in this building who just stopped your rejection. I am picking up an 8-year-old who has already waited too long. The hiring coordinator looked almost pleased. Miss Hart, this is exactly the concern I raised. Evelyn closed Caleb's application. Her board expected a factory decision in less than 3 hours. Contamination alarms were threatening a $40 million reopening, and the man named in her father's last warning was refusing to enter an elevator. Fine, she said. I'm coming with you. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Why? Because if I let you leave alone, security may not allow you back. Because I need answers. And because my legal team is preparing to certify a facility that may not be safe. She handed the coordinator her tablet. Issue Mr. Ward a temporary restricted access badge. Effective now. He has not completed screening. Then complete it while we drive. 20 minutes later, Caleb pulled into the elementary school pickup lane with Evelyn in the passenger seat, still answering board messages. She had expected a company car, or at least an explanation. Instead, Caleb had said nothing after asking her to buckle up. Maya stood beneath the awning with a poster tube tucked under one arm. When she saw him, relief crossed her face before irritation replaced it. She opened the back door and stopped at the sight of Evelyn. Who is she? My possible boss. The one making you late. Evelyn looked back. Partly. Maya climbed in. Then you owe me $12. Caleb started the engine. Why 12? The late program fee. That is not how owing works. It is how math works. Evelyn covered a smile by checking her tablet. Maya pushed the poster tube between the seats. My bridge collapsed. Today was the load test. Caleb asked. Tomorrow. It collapsed in my backpack because somebody packed my lunch on top of it. Caleb glanced at the rearview mirror. That somebody accepts responsibility. That somebody also promised we would rebuild it tonight. Caleb's hand tightened slightly on the wheel. He had a second interview scheduled at 6, one he had not mentioned to Evelyn, and no certainty that Halcyon would hire him after the background check reached those missing years. We will rebuild it, he said. He did not add when. At home, Maya spread broken wooden sticks across the kitchen table while Caleb changed into a clean work shirt. Evelyn remained near the doorway, reviewing photographs from Halcyon's service corridor. She had intended to stay 5 minutes. Then she noticed Maya sorting the bridge pieces into numbered piles. Those joints failed in the same direction, Evelyn said. Maya looked up. Because the glue was bad? Maybe. Or the pressure reached them from one side. Caleb returned, saw the photographs on Evelyn's tablet, and set his keys down. A thin gray residue marked the base of every ventilation panel. Those are not contamination alarms, he said. They are airflow reversals. Evelyn turned the screen toward him. Legal says the sensors are defective. Legal does not maintain air systems. He enlarged one image and pointed to a narrow line beside the vent housing. Someone replaced the intake seals with the wrong polymer. Heat softens them. Pressure pulls outside particles backward into the clean corridor. Can you prove that? With a smoke test and the original maintenance logs. Those logs were destroyed during the archive migration. Caleb looked toward the purple bracelet on his wrist, then at Maya's bridge pieces arranged like a small structural failure map. Not all of them. Evelyn lowered the tablet. The envelope listed your old address because you kept copies. Caleb began aligning 2 broken bridge supports instead of answering. His silence lasted long enough to become an answer of its own. Maya slid the glue toward him. You are doing the thing again. Evelyn glanced at her. What thing? He knows something, but he makes everybody guess until they get mad. Caleb exhaled through his nose. Maya, you said honesty includes useful details. The inconvenience was small, but the truth landed cleanly. Evelyn's patience hardened. My father trusted you with evidence tied to a sealed prototype wing. You left 6 years blank, and now you admit records survived. What are you protecting? Caleb picked up one of the bridge supports. Not what? Who? His phone buzzed with the second interview reminder. He dismissed it without reading the message. Evelyn saw the company name before the screen went dark. Caleb had another option, and he had hidden that too. She made her decision before he could retreat behind another careful answer. We are going back to Halcyon tonight, she said. You will run the smoke test. I will stop the certification vote until we have results. Caleb looked at Maya's bridge. Maya looked at the clock. You promised. Evelyn removed her jacket, rolled up her sleeves, and sat beside the broken model. Then we rebuild this first. Hold that joint steady, Caleb said. Evelyn pressed 2 wooden supports together while Maya wrapped a rubber band around them with the solemn concentration of a surgeon. Not too tight, Maya warned. Last time Dad fixed my kite, it became a weapon. It survived, Caleb said. It flew directly into Mrs. Carson's fence. Evelyn adjusted her grip instead of laughing. 10 minutes earlier, she had been preparing to suspend a factory certification. Now she was learning that Maya's bridge design depended on tension rather than glue. Caleb watched her follow the child's instructions without taking over. When the final support held, Maya carried the model to her room, then returned with a handwritten sign that read, "Do not pack lunch on top." She taped it to Caleb's work bag. "You're coming back before breakfast?" "Yes. That means before breakfast, not when breakfast is over." Caleb crouched until they were eye level. "Before breakfast." Maya studied his face, searching for the part he had not said. "Okay." Evelyn noticed that Caleb did not promise to call if the plan changed. He seemed to believe promises stayed cleaner when they contained fewer details. At Halcyon, the restricted corridor remained under night lighting. Every third ceiling panel dimmed to conserve power. Evelyn used her executive badge to override the service lock. "Security monitors every entry," she said. "Good." That was not reassurance. "Once I stop the vote, the board will ask why I brought an unscreened applicant into a sealed wing. Tell them the truth." "Which portion?" Caleb set down his toolbox. She had earned that answer. He knew it, but habit closed around him before trust could. "The portion you can prove." Evelyn sent the suspension notice anyway. Within seconds, 3 board messages appeared, followed by a legal hold warning. Halting the certification protected the workers and gave them time, but it also triggered an automatic review of every person entering the corridor. Caleb's temporary badge began blinking amber. "We have 40 minutes before security removes your access," she said. "Then stop reading messages. Those messages control whether this facility opens." "No. The seals control whether it opens safely." Evelyn almost ordered him to follow her process. Instead, she put the tablet face down. "Show me what you need." Caleb removed 2 vent covers while Evelyn opened the building control panel. He understood airflow by sound and resistance. She understood the automated system well enough to isolate one zone without shutting down the entire floor. "On my mark, reduce intake pressure by 12%, he said. "That will produce an incomplete test. It will keep the contaminated air inside this corridor. The official protocol requires full pressure. The official protocol assumes the seals work." Evelyn looked at the amber badge, then changed the settings manually. The smoke thread traveled toward the intake, paused, and curled backward through the seam Caleb had identified. The reversal proved his diagnosis. It also tripped the corridor's contamination response. Steel fire doors lowered at both exits, locking them inside. Evelyn stared at the warning display. "You knew that could happen." "I knew it might. And you decided I did not need that detail. If I had told you, would you have run the test?" "I would have prepared for the lockout." Caleb reached beneath the control cabinet and felt along the wall. "There should be a mechanical release. There is no release listed in the current plans." "Current plans." He removed a narrow metal plate concealed behind a cable tray. Beneath it sat an old manual lever and a data port coated with gray dust. Evelyn knelt beside him. A faded serial number had been scratched into the metal by hand. "CW-17. Those are your initials." They were. Initials do not expire. Caleb connected a maintenance reader from his toolbox. The screen opened a local archive that Halcyon's migration records claimed had been destroyed. Most files were corrupted, but one inspection log remained intact. It showed the original high-temperature seals passing every pressure test. 6 months later, a replacement order had substituted a cheaper polymer. The authorization field was blank, but the order carried Evelyn's executive encryption key. She leaned closer. "I never approved this." "The key says you did." "Then either I signed something I did not understand, or someone used my authority." Caleb scrolled to the final attachment. A photograph appeared. The damaged access badge from her father's envelope lying beside a melted seal sample. The image timestamp was 6 years old. Evelyn stopped looking at the screen and looked at Caleb. "You were here when this began." He pulled the manual lever. The fire door rose several inches, enough to restore emergency access. "I was here when they decided how it would end." His answer withheld more than it revealed, and this time Evelyn did not chase it. She copied the surviving files to her tablet, then removed Caleb's amber badge and replaced it with her unrestricted executive credential. "This makes me responsible for every door you open tonight." Caleb accepted it carefully. "You should not trust me that much." "I don't." She gathered the smoke canister and stood. "But I trust the evidence you refuse to let them bury. Our objective is no longer proving defective seals. We find out who used my key and why your name was supposed to disappear with the records." "Step away from the archive port," Halcyon's general counsel said through the half-raised fire door. Two security officers waited behind him, and Caleb's temporary badge flashed red in Evelyn's hand. That device now contains material subject to corporate seizure. Caleb disconnected the reader and slipped it into his toolbox. It contains inspection records your migration system erased, which makes it company property. It also contains employee statements. Evelyn glanced at Caleb. He had not mentioned statements. Counsel raised a sealed evidence pouch. Place the reader inside, Mr. Ward. We will preserve chain of custody. Caleb looked at the security cameras above the corridor. 6 years earlier, workers had trusted him because their names never entered Halcyon's central network. Handing over the reader might validate the evidence, but it could also expose everyone who had reported unsafe substitutions before the archive disappeared. No, he said. Evelyn moved between him and the door. The corridor remains under executive investigation. Security will not seize anything until I authorize an independent forensic image. Your encryption key approved the replacement order, counsel replied. You are no longer an independent authority. Evelyn's jaw tightened. He was right about the conflict, even if he was using it as a weapon. Her board needed proof before dawn, and every minute Caleb withheld the reader made the surviving files easier to dismiss as contaminated evidence. Caleb, give me the device. I cannot. You trusted me with the files 10 minutes ago. I trusted you to see them. I did not agree to expose the people inside them. That distinction protected the right boundary and sabotaged the only process capable of making the records admissible. Evelyn understood both truths at once. She opened her tablet and issued 3 orders. Suspend all seal replacement work, revoke the plan operations chief's purchasing authority, and appoint an external laboratory to image the reader on-site without uploading its contents to Halcyon's servers. Counsel read the notifications as they arrived. You just froze the reopening. Until the airflow system is cleared. The board will call an emergency vote. Then schedule it. The decision kept workers out of a compromised facility, but it also triggered penalties in Halcyon's hospital contracts and placed Evelyn's position at immediate risk. One security officer lowered his radio. External lab arrival is 45 minutes. Caleb checked his phone. Maya had sent a photograph of the rebuilt bridge beside a bowl of cereal, followed by 3 words. You said breakfast. He typed, I'm trying, then deleted it. Trying was not a time. He called Mrs. Carson instead and asked her to take Maya to school. The favor cost him tomorrow's pickup shift and the small trust he had promised to repair. Evelyn saw his face as he ended the call, but she did not ask him to stay. You can leave, she said. The lab can image the reader without you. Caleb looked toward counsel. Not safely. One wrong command wipes the local cache. Counsel gave a thin smile. Convenient. Evelyn ignored him and opened the procurement ledger. The replacement order had passed through a dormant vendor named Northline Thermal Systems. Its registered address matched an empty warehouse, but the tax identification number belonged to a real supplier Halcyon had used before the migration. Northline is a shell, she said. Someone copied a legitimate vendor's credentials. Caleb set the toolbox on the floor, but kept one hand on the latch. Check receiving records, not purchase orders. Evelyn pulled the loading bay logs. 3 deliveries appeared under Northline's name. Each had been accepted manually after the barcode system rejected them. The same employee ID authorized all 3. Daniel Mercer, Halcyon's current director of compliance, and the man scheduled to present the safety certification to the board. Counsel stopped reading over her shoulder. Mercer claims he was attending a regulatory conference on those dates. Then somebody used his ID too, Evelyn said. Caleb opened a hidden folder on the reader and displayed a photograph of the second delivery. A man stood beside the shipment, his face turned away, wearing Mercer's security badge. Reflected in the truck window was another figure holding the camera. The reflection was blurred, but the purple service stripe on the sleeve belonged to Halcyon's old prototype safety team. Evelyn enlarged it. That was your unit. Yes. Were you the person taking the photograph? Caleb studied the angle, then shook his head. No. The answer cleared one suspicion and created a more dangerous obligation. Someone else from his team had preserved the evidence, and that person might still be inside Halcyon. Evelyn locked the loading records from deletion and sent a preservation order directly to the external lab. Mercer stays unaware until we know whether his identity was stolen or his alibi was manufactured. Caleb released the toolbox latch. For the first time that night, he gave her a choice before protecting the evidence for her. The witness names remained sealed. Evelyn nodded. Agreed. But from now on, you tell me what a decision costs before I make it. Caleb looked at Maya's unanswered message, then handed Evelyn the reader. Then the first cost is mine. I'm missing breakfast to keep this evidence alive. The image is complete, the forensic analyst said, but there is a problem with the signature history. Caleb stood beside Evelyn in the sealed conference room while the external lab projected the recovered archive onto a blank wall. It was nearly 6 in the morning. Maya's unanswered breakfast message remained at the top of his phone. Across town, Halcyon's board was gathering for the emergency vote Evelyn had triggered, and hospital partners were demanding to know whether delayed equipment shipments would affect patient care. Show us, Evelyn said. The analyst opened the purge record Caleb had claimed was evidence of the archive migration. At the bottom of the authorization page was a digital signature. Caleb Ward. Evelyn turned toward him. You approved the deletion? I approved an offline transfer. The system records it as a purge. Because the central archive had been compromised, we moved the safety files to isolated storage before anyone could alter them again. Who is we? Caleb glanced at the encrypted witness folder. People whose names remained sealed. The analyst enlarged the metadata. The transfer completed, but the verification step was canceled manually. Without that step, the official system treated every copied file as unverified and deleted the originals. Evelyn understood the consequence before Caleb explained it. The records had not vanished because an unseen enemy outsmarted Halcyon. They had vanished because Caleb's emergency solution preserved the evidence privately while destroying its institutional credibility. You made the files impossible to use, she said. I made them impossible to rewrite, and impossible to prove. At the time, 3 workers had already been threatened with termination for reporting seal failures. So you chose secrecy. I chose people. Evelyn looked at the witness folder, then at the order carrying her stolen encryption key. Until that moment, she had seen Caleb as the person her father trusted to preserve the truth. Now the same actions could be read as obstruction, unauthorized access, or even evidence manipulation. Her father's warning changed with them. Find Caleb Ward before the company finds someone to blame had not identified a hidden savior. It had identified the one man whose decision could either expose the failure or absorb all responsibility for it. The conference door opened, and Daniel Mercer entered with board counsel. He looked exhausted rather than defensive. My badge was not stolen, he said. It was shared. Evelyn's expression hardened. Compliance credentials are never shared. They were during the prototype shutdown. Your father authorized an emergency access pool because the barcode system kept failing. 6 supervisors used rotating IDs, including mine. Caleb nodded once. That explains the deliveries. Mercer looked at him. It also explains why none of us could prove who accepted them. The new information did not clear Mercer or accuse him. It revealed a process designed for speed that had erased individual accountability. Evelyn had spent the night searching for the person who misused authority. The evidence was pointing instead toward a company culture that treated temporary exceptions as invisible infrastructure. Board counsel placed a disclosure form on the table. The vote begins in 20 minutes. We need a clean position. Either the recovered archive is authentic and Mr. Ward's purge becomes part of the investigation, or the archive is unreliable and cannot support suspending certification. Evelyn looked at Caleb. There is a third option. We disclose the archive, the purge, the shared credentials, and the limits of what we know. That exposes Halcyon to regulatory action, counsel said, and exposes Mr. Ward to criminal referral. Caleb's phone vibrated. Maya had sent another message. Mrs. Carson says I can still present the bridge without you. He read it twice, then placed the phone face down. His instinct was to decide alone, protect the witnesses alone, and carry the consequences without allowing anyone close enough to share them. That instinct had already turned one emergency choice into 6 years of silence. Open the witness folder, he said. Evelyn watched him carefully. Are you consenting or surrendering? The question stopped him. No one had asked that distinction before. Consenting to independent review, he said. Not surrendering their names to Halcyon. Evelyn amended the disclosure order herself. Witness identities would go directly to the regulator under protective seal. The board would receive the evidence, Caleb's authorization history, and her written admission that executive controls had failed under her leadership. The decision preserved the investigation, but it ended any possibility of quietly reopening the factory or containing the damage inside one department. It also meant Evelyn could lose the company before she learned whether she had saved it. Caleb signed beneath her name. "You should go to Maya," Evelyn said. "The board will assume you fled. Then tell them where I am. They may issue a summons. Then I will come back." Evelyn handed him the purple bracelet wrist he had unconsciously hidden beneath his sleeve and closed his fingers around his keys. It was not forgiveness, and it was not trust without conditions. It was shared responsibility with boundaries clearly spoken. Caleb left for the school while Evelyn entered the boardroom carrying evidence that implicated her company, her father's emergency system, and the man she had chosen to protect from becoming the only name attached to a collective failure. "You missed the beginning," Maya said when Caleb reached the classroom door. She stood beside her rebuilt bridge while Mrs. Carson loaded metal washers into a paper cup. Caleb lowered his voice. "I know. I'm sorry. You said before breakfast. I should not have said that when I could not control it." Maya looked at him for a moment, then pointed to an empty chair. "You can watch the rest. But don't fix anything." Caleb sat down. The bridge held 12 washers, then 15. At 18, one support bent without breaking. Maya adjusted nothing. She let Mrs. Carson add the 19th. The center span collapsed, scattering washers across the table. Caleb's hands moved instinctively, but he stopped before touching the model. Maya gathered the pieces herself. "It did better than yesterday," she said. "It did. Next time, I'm packing it." His phone vibrated before he could answer. Evelyn's name appeared with a message beneath it. "Board will restart operations unless we physically verify the seal failure in 25 minutes. Caleb showed Maya the screen rather than hiding it. People could get hurt if they reopen. Maya hugged the broken bridge to her chest. "Are you asking me or telling me?" The question exposed the habit he kept calling protection. "I'm asking whether Mrs. Carson can take you home after school while I go back." "Yes, but you have to call me when you know when you're coming. Not before." Caleb nodded. "That's fair." At Halcyon, Evelyn stood at the boardroom table while the recovered files, loading records, and replacement order filled 3 screens. Daniel Mercer sat across from her. General Counsel had already drafted a resolution to resume limited production. "The archive is compromised," one director said. "Mr. Ward's own actions broke verification." "That is true," Evelyn replied. "He made an unauthorized decision, and I brought him into a restricted area before screening was complete. Those facts do not make the seals safe. You froze hospital equipment shipments on an inference. I froze them because I was unwilling to let delivery pressure replace testing. That decision is mine." The board agreed to one controlled examination in the sealed corridor. No additional records. No broader investigation. If the test failed to reproduce the defect, production would resume immediately. Caleb arrived as the external analyst removed a narrow strip from the same vent housing used in the smoke test. Evelyn opened the original maintenance specification recovered from the offline archive. Caleb read the temperature range, then examined the faint manufacturer code molded into the strip. "Northline did not make this," he said. Mercer leaned closer. "Northline was only the distributor." "No. The legitimate supplier used a 4-character batch stamp. This has 3. Evelyn pulled up the loading photograph from the second delivery. The plastic wrapping showed the same 3-character mark that connected the physical seal to the shipment accepted under Mercer's shared credentials, but it did not identify who had ordered the substitution. The analyst placed the strip inside the portable test chamber already used to validate the corridor sample. Evelyn set the pressure threshold from the current building system. Caleb corrected the temperature upward by 6 degrees. "That exceeds standard protocol," a director said. "It matches the heat recorded before every reversal alarm," Caleb replied. "Standard protocol is what allowed this material to pass." Evelyn approved the adjustment. The decision strengthened the test, but it also let counsel argue that she had tailored conditions to support her conclusion. At the recorded alarm temperature, the strip softened. Under negative pressure, its edge folded inward, opening a channel wide enough to pull unfiltered air through the vent seam. Mercer removed his glasses. Then the alarms were accurate. Yes, Evelyn said. And my office certified the control system that dismissed them. The board suspended the reopening and ordered inspection of every seal from the 3 Northline deliveries. It was the small victory they needed, and it carried immediate damage. Hospital shipments would be delayed. Contract penalties would begin that afternoon. Evelyn was placed on administrative leave pending review of her executive key and her handling of the investigation. Counsel then handed Caleb a formal notice. His background application was denied, his access was revoked, and his archive purge had been referred for possible prosecution. Evelyn looked at the paper. I can challenge this. Not while you're suspended. Caleb returned her executive badge. He had protected the evidence, but his years of withholding context had made him the easiest person to isolate from it. As security opened the corridor door, Evelyn copied the verified test result to the regulator's protected submission. They can remove both of us, she said. They cannot put the seal back the way it was. Caleb checked the time, then called Maya before making another promise. The glue goes on the joint, not around it, Maya said. Caleb sat at the kitchen table with the broken bridge between his hands, carefully scraping away the thick ring of adhesive he had added without asking. I know that now. You knew it yesterday. Yesterday, I thought more glue meant more strength. Maya sorted the bent supports into 2 piles. It made them heavier. Caleb nodded. The lesson was simple enough when it belonged to wood, harder when it belonged to people. His phone lay beside the purple bracelet, displaying the notice that Halcyon had referred his archive purge for possible prosecution. He had already drafted 3 explanations and sent none. A knock came at the door. Evelyn stood outside without her executive badge or tablet, carrying a cardboard document box she was no longer authorized to open. The board sealed my office, she said. They allowed me personal items. Maya looked inside the box. That is mostly paper. That is what adults call personal items when they work too much. Maya accepted the answer and returned to her bridge. Evelyn placed a small metal nameplate on the table. Evelyn Hart, Chief Executive Officer. She turned it face down. Caleb pointed toward the coffee maker. It still works, but it sounds dangerous. I have heard worse assessments of Halcyon today. He poured 2 cups while Maya tested a replacement support. No one spoke until the wood held under her thumb. Evelyn looked at Caleb's phone. Your attorney? I don't have one. Then stop writing statements by yourself. I was not going to send them. That is not better. Caleb set down the coffee. No, it isn't. Maya carried the bridge to the counter to let the glue dry, leaving them with the scattered pieces she had rejected. Caleb picked up 1 split support. I kept telling myself silence protected people. Sometimes it did, but I also used it to control what everyone else was allowed to know. Evelyn waited. I left 6 years off the application. I let you enter that corridor without explaining the lockout risk. I promised Maya breakfast when I knew the work could run all night. Every time, I called it protection. The result was that you had to make decisions without the facts, and she stopped trusting my times. He placed the broken support beside the phone. I'm sorry for withholding information and making other people carry the uncertainty. From now on, I will state what I know, what I'm protecting, and what a choice may cost before I ask anyone to take it with me. Maya returned for a paper towel. Does that include pickup? Especially pickup. Okay. She wiped glue from the table and walked away without offering forgiveness or punishment. Evelyn turned her nameplate over, then back again. I ordered the factory frozen before I had a complete chain of proof. It was the correct safety decision, but I used my authority as if urgency excused bypassing everyone who would bear the cost. Hospital teams lost shipments. Employees lost shifts. Then I treated the board's resistance as cowardice instead of acknowledging that some of them were trying to protect legitimate obligations. She slid the nameplate away. I'm sorry I asked you for total disclosure while hiding behind executive control. At the hearing, I will name my decision, its consequences, and the controls I failed to maintain. I will not ask the board to blame Mercer, legal, or you for choices made under my authority. Caleb looked toward the document box. The regulator's hearing is tomorrow. They moved it to this afternoon. The board wants the suspension resolved before contract penalties increase. They will separate us. Yes, and counsel will argue your archive is unreliable because you broke verification. Caleb picked up his phone. The witness folder can corroborate the seal reports. Only if the witnesses consent to being contacted. They consented to protective review, not public testimony. Evelyn nodded. Then we do not spend their safety to save ourselves. That answer altered the problem. They could no longer win by producing every name or forcing one person to carry the case. Maya brought the bridge back and placed it between them. I need 2 supports replaced. Not all of them. Caleb studied the surviving structure, then opened the recovered archive index on his phone. The original specifications, the loading photograph, the shared credential records, the physical seal test, and his purge authorization already formed separate supports. None proved the entire story alone. Together, they could prove that reopening was unsafe and that accountability had been distributed, not absent. Evelyn drew a line through the strategy she had prepared. We stopped trying to identify one guilty person before the hearing. We proved the system allowed unsafe material to enter, alarms to be dismissed, and responsibility to vanish. And we accept that they may still remove us both. Caleb called Mrs. Carson and gave her the exact hearing time, the uncertain end time, and permission to make other arrangements if he missed pickup. Then he called the regulator. Caleb Ward, he said, I'm prepared to testify about the archive purge, including what I did wrong. Evelyn Hart will testify separately. We are not coordinating a defense. We are presenting the same evidence and accepting different responsibilities. Evelyn lifted the document box. At the door, Caleb looked back at Maya. I don't know when I'll return. Call when you do. I will. He closed the door without adding a promise he could not control, and together he and Evelyn walked toward a hearing where telling the whole truth might cost them the company, their freedom, or the last protection surrounding the people they had chosen not to sacrifice. The company is prepared to resume limited production under supervision, Halcyon's counsel said. Evelyn slid the proposed agreement back across the compliance table. No, not until the material control system is rebuilt. The regulator looked from her to Caleb, seated separately with the forensic reader between them. Ms. Hart, your board authorized this proposal. My board authorized a way to reduce contract losses. I authorized the controls that failed. I will not use hospital demand to make an unsafe process acceptable. That decision removed Halcyon's fastest path to reopening and exposed the company to greater penalties, but it also prevented the hearing from becoming a negotiation over how much uncertainty workers should tolerate. The regulator turned to Caleb. Mr. Ward, did you delete Halcyon's original safety archive? I authorized a transfer that caused the originals to be deleted before verification. Was that intentional? The transfer was. The failed verification was my mistake. Counsel leaned forward. And without verified originals, nothing recovered from his private device can establish authenticity. Not alone, Caleb said. He connected the forensic reader to the hearing display. That is why we stopped treating it as one piece of proof. He opened the original seal specification. It required a heat-resistant polymer with a 4-character manufacturer stamp. Evelyn placed the strip removed from the corridor beside the projected document. Its molded code contained 3 characters. Caleb opened the loading photograph recovered from the offline archive. The same 3-character mark was visible through the wrapping on the second Northline shipment. Next came the receiving logs, 3 rejected barcodes, 3 manual acceptances, all recorded under Daniel Mercer's rotating compliance ID. Mercer, attending under instruction from the board, confirmed that 6 supervisors had legally shared that ID during the prototype shutdown. The log proves access, counsel said, not responsibility. Correct, Evelyn replied. The credential system was designed so responsibility could not be reliably assigned. She opened the purchase authorization bearing her executive encryption key. We believe this proved I approve the substitution. It does not. The external forensic analyst, already appointed to image Caleb's reader, displayed the signature history extracted from the same recovered order. The authorization token had not been created when the replacement was selected. It had been copied automatically when the rejected barcode forced the order into Halcyon's emergency procurement route. That route inherited the last executive key used to approve the prototype shutdown. Evelyn's key had remained embedded in the template for 8 months. No person entered my credentials for this order, she said. The process attached my authority without requiring my review. The regulator studied the sequence. Then who approved the cheaper polymer? The system cannot answer that, Evelyn said. A purchasing exception allowed an equivalent material when the approved supplier could not meet schedule. Equivalent was never defined by temperature performance, and the manual receiving process required no second technical sign-off. Caleb opened the verified chamber test result from the corridor examination. At the documented alarm temperature, the substituted strips softened and folded under negative pressure. The test connected the physical material to the recorded airflow reversals. The original specification established what should have been installed. The loading photograph connected the defective batch to Northline's delivery. The receiving records showed how rejected material entered the facility. The authorization history proved Evelyn's key represented an automated inheritance, not her informed approval. No single document carried the whole truth, but every independent support held the same weight. Counsel pointed toward Caleb's purge signature. None of this changes the fact that Mr. Ward obstructed Halcyon's ability to investigate 6 years ago. Caleb did not argue. It changes what my mistake means. I destroyed the company's verification path because I believed isolation was the only way to keep reports from being altered. That protected the witness statements, but it also made accountability easier to avoid. I was wrong to decide that alone. The regulator looked toward the encrypted folder. Will you release the witnesses? Only through protected review, under the consent they already gave. Their names are not required to prove the seals were unsafe. Evelyn placed her executive key audit beside the reader. And Halcyon will waive privilege over the emergency procurement design, the shared credential policy, and the alarm dismissal rules. Not selected pages. The complete control structure. Counsel turned sharply. You are suspended. You cannot waive company privilege. Then record it as my recommendation and my refusal to support any settlement that conceals those controls. Mercer opened the old loading photograph again. Reflected in the truck window was the purple striped sleeve of the prototype safety team member who had taken it. The regulator compared its timestamp with Caleb's transfer log. The photograph had been created 4 minutes before Caleb initiated the purge. His transfer had preserved it. It had not manufactured it. The final suspicion attached to the archive weakened under its own chronology. Evelyn looked at the handwritten instruction her father had left with the damaged badge. Find Caleb Ward before the company finds someone to blame. My father knew the purge would make Caleb the only identifiable decision-maker in a system built on shared authority, she said. He was not hiding a hero. He was warning us not to convert a collective control failure into one convenient name. The regulator recessed for 12 minutes. When the panel returned, it denied Halcyon permission to reopen the affected lines. The 3 Northline shipments were placed under mandatory trace and removal. Shared credential pools were prohibited. Every material substitution would require dual approval from procurement and engineering, with named human authorization. Contamination alarms could no longer be dismissed through automated equivalency rules. Hospital contracts would be moved to a monitored recovery schedule rather than used to justify immediate production. A protected channel would allow the sealed witnesses to corroborate events without disclosure to Halcyon management. Caleb's purge referral remained active, but the regulator rejected counsel's request to classify him as the cause of the safety failure. Evelyn's suspension also remained, and the board was ordered to review whether executive authority could be restored only after independent control testing. Outside the hearing room, Caleb checked his phone. Maya had sent a photograph of her bridge holding 21 washers. Beneath it, she had written, "Call when you know." Evelyn stood beside him without asking what would happen to Halcyon or to them. Their strategy had worked, but neither had escaped its cost. Caleb pressed Maya's number only after reading the regulator's written schedule. "School pickup is at 3, he said when she answered. "The hearing is over. I can be there at 2:45. A pause followed. "Is that a real time?" "Yes." "Okay. Bring the broken support. I want to show you why it failed." Caleb looked at Evelyn, who was carrying the order that had protected the workers and stripped her of control over the company she had tried to save. "I will," he said. 10 weeks later, Caleb arrived at Willow Creek Elementary at 2:42, parked, and texted Maya before leaving the truck. "I'm outside." She emerged at 2:47 carrying the bridge that had once collapsed beneath 19 washers. It now held 30, though 2 supports had been replaced with darker wood. "You're early," she said. "By 3 minutes." I counted 5. I waited until I knew. Maya considered that, then climbed into the passenger seat. Their new rule was written on a card clipped above the dashboard. Exact time, honest uncertainty, call before plans change. Caleb still caught himself offering answers that sounded safer than they were. When he did, Maya pointed at the card, and he started again. The regulator had closed his criminal referral after the protected witness review confirmed that he had preserved safety reports rather than altered them. He still accepted responsibility for the failed verification through a formal compliance agreement, 20 hours of records management training, and testimony used to redesign emergency archive procedures. Halcyon did not hire him directly. An independent facilities contractor advertised the remediation position, screened every applicant, reviewed his 6 missing years, and selected him after 3 interviews. Caleb now worked 4 days a week inspecting airflow systems across the affected production lines. Every report required a second signature, including his own. At first, he hated waiting for approval from people who understood less about vents than he did. Then one afternoon, a junior engineer caught a temperature conversion error in his test plan. Caleb corrected the report, thanked her in writing, and stopped calling review a delay. Evelyn remained suspended for 7 weeks. During that time, she attended every control hearing without using her father's name or the board's failures as cover. When the directors restored her authority, it came with conditions she had proposed herself: independent safety oversight, worker representation on material change reviews, and quarterly publication of unresolved contamination alerts. She returned as CEO with less unilateral power than before. That was the point. The affected lines reopened gradually after every North Line seal was removed and replacement batches passed both laboratory and operating temperature tests. Hospital shipments resumed under the monitored schedule, and Halcyon paid contract penalties rather than challenging them. Evelyn signed each disclosure personally, then sent the documents through the same review channel as everyone else. She and Caleb disagreed often. He thought one inspection checklist buried risk beneath paperwork. She thought his alternative relied too heavily on individual judgment. Instead of walking away or issuing an order, they tested both systems with technicians who would actually use them. His version found faults faster. Hers documented who acted and when. The final procedure kept both. On Thursdays, Evelyn sometimes joined Caleb and Maya for dinner, but only after asking Maya earlier in the week. Maya said yes most Thursdays, no twice, and once requested that Evelyn leave after dessert because she wanted to finish a science project alone with her father. Evelyn thanked her for saying so and went home without making the boundary feel like rejection. She never tried to repair the bridge, though she learned how to carry it level. Caleb learned not to turn every invitation into a promise about the future. When Evelyn asked whether he and Maya wanted to attend Halcyon's family open house, he checked the calendar, spoke with Maya privately, and answered the next morning. They went for 1 hour. Maya spent most of it testing air pressure with a handheld meter and refused the executive tour because the engineering lab was more interesting. One Friday evening, after the last remediation report cleared review, Evelyn found Caleb outside the school gym holding the bridge while Maya attended robotics club. The purple bead bracelet had been restrung with stronger cord, but one faded bead remained near the clasp. Dinner? Evelyn asked. Caleb checked the time. Maya finishes at 6. We plan tacos. May I join you? I'll ask her when she comes out. Evelyn nodded and sat beside him on the low brick wall. She did not open her phone. Caleb did not fill the silence with a decision he had no right to make alone. When Maya came through the doors, she listened to the invitation, looked at Evelyn, and said, "You can come, but Dad promised I get to choose the music." "That sounds binding," Evelyn said. In the truck, Maya placed the reinforced bridge across Evelyn's knees and selected a loud song Caleb pretended to dislike. He gave the exact arrival time to the restaurant. Evelyn held the bridge steady through every turn, and Maya sang from the back seat while the 3 of them drove toward an ordinary Friday night they had made room for together.